The shape tools in Photoshop can create shapes that are either pixel-based or vector-based. The benefit of creating vector-based shapes is that they're resolution independent, so you don't have to worry about their size. After you draw a shape, you can transform it as large or as small as you'd like, as many times as you'd like, and they'll always maintain their quality. In this video, we're going to discover the large variety of different shapes that Photoshop has to offer and learn how to modify them. I'll tap the U key in order to select my shape tools. We can click and hold in order to see the nested shapes, and then select the rectangle tool. In order to make sure that we all have the same settings, I'm going to right-click on the shape and choose Reset Tool. I want to be sure that I'm creating a shape, not a path or pixels. So I'll select that, and then I'll choose my fill. Clicking on the color swatch enables me to select from either a solid color fill or a gradient or a pattern. In this case, I'll use a solid color orange swatch, and then I can do the same for a stroke. I can click and select either a swatch for a solid color or a gradient or a pattern. Return to that red color for the stroke and increase the size of the stroke to 10 pixels. If you want to modify other attributes of the stroke, use the drop-down menu here, and you have additional stroke options for creating dashed or dotted strokes and changing additional options. For now, I'll leave it as a solid stroke and click and drag out a shape in the image area. As soon as I create a shape, if we look in my Layers panel, we can see that I have a new shape layer. Every time I click and drag out a shape, I'll get a new shape layer. I can also just click anywhere in the image area and then create a rectangle or a shape any size that I'd like. In this case, I'll do 500 by 500 pixels. As I drag out my shapes, they share the same shortcuts as our marquee tools. So if I hold down the Shift key, that will constrain it to a square. If I hold down the Option or the Alt key, that's going to draw it from the center. And if I hold down the space bar, I can then reposition the point of origin. When I let go of the space bar, I can continue dragging out the shape. When you draw a shape, the property panels also appear, where we can change many of the same attributes that we find in the options bar. However, we can also change the live shape properties, in this case, the curvature of the edge of the shapes. By default, the four corners are going to be linked together so that if I change one, they're going to all change at once. But I can unlink those and then click and drag either left or right in order to increase or decrease the curvature of a single side of my shape. All right, let's select those four shape layers and tap the Delete key in order to delete them. And from the nested shapes, I'll choose the Polygon tool. By default, it's set to 5 sides, so I can click and drag out my polygon in my image area. I can rotate the cursor in order to rotate the shape, and I can hold down the space bar in order to reposition it. There are additional options underneath this gear icon, including options to smooth the corners or create a star, in which case I can choose how much to indent the sides and whether or not I want them smooth. It doesn't change the shape that I've already drawn, but when I drag out the next shape, I'll see those results. Now, I spent some time and created a few shapes. If you want to look at them, they're actually on the background layer here. So I've got some different shapes and then the settings that I used to create those shapes. For now, let's go ahead and make those other layers visible and move to the Line tool. So often I see people try to change the stroke for the Line tool when more often than not, they actually want to change the weight of the Line tool. So I'm going to remove the stroke here by clicking the No Stroke swatch, and then I'll click and drag out, but that's going to make a very small line because the weight is only 1 pixel. Let's increase that to 25. And then drag out another line. And in fact, the gear icon also has options for the Line tool if I wanted to add arrowheads, for example, to the start or to the end of the line. Finally, let's take a look at the Custom Shape tool. As soon as I select that, I have a custom shape picker in the options bar. There are a number of default groups of shapes that ship with Photoshop that I can choose from. So for example, I might select the wild animals and then click and drag out the shape, holding down the Shift key in order to constrain the aspect ratio of the shape. There are additional shapes that you can access by selecting the Shapes panel and then using the flyout menu and choosing Legacy Shapes and More. Now we can see there are a bunch of new shapes that have been added, so be sure to check those out when you have a minute. So there you go. The next time you want to create a re-editable, scalable vector shape, use the shape tools in Photoshop.